Chris Webber, one of the most versatile and unique power forwards of all time. Back in his day, he was right up there competing with the other great power forwards of his generation. Guys like Dirk Nowitzki, Tim Duncan, and Kevin Garnett. C-Webb held his own against them, and at his peak, he was just as good as all of them. In some years, he was even better. However, when looking back at his career, he obviously does not get the same recognition as those three. Part of it was because of injuries, part of it was because he didn't win any championships, and also because he didn't have as many memorable playoff performances. But when it comes to his talent, his skills, he had it all. How's it going, folks? My name's Andy, and in this video, I'm gonna go over Chris Webber's entire career from start to finish. How good was he actually? How good was he before he joined Sacramento? And how good was he afterwards? And as of this video, why is he still not in the Hall of Fame? Those are questions I will be answering. But before we start, I'd like to give a big shout out to The Athletic for sponsoring this video. The Athletic is the best place to read about basketball, everything from detailed analysis to player rankings to team or player breakdowns. It features a world-class team of talented basketball writers, great storytelling to go along with their articles. And if you sign up, it's completely ad-free with no annoying pop-ups. Personally, my favorite writers on there are John Hollinger and Tim Cato. Go to theathletic.com/AndyHoops for a 7-day free trial and 50% off your subscription. Before getting drafted in 1993, Webber played college ball at Michigan for 2 years. However, later on, it was discovered that he was part of a huge scandal there. It was called the Ed Martin Scandal. Basically, after a joint investigation from the FBI, the IRS, and the United States Department of Justice, it was discovered the University of Michigan was part of the biggest basketball scandal of the entire century. It revolved around Ed Martin, a notorious money launderer who's running an illegal gambling operation for well over a decade. Many players, including Chris Webber, were discovered to have taken huge sums of money from Martin, which he gave it out to encourage players to attend Michigan. This continued until 1999, and eventually, after all the evidence was found, Michigan ended up having 6 of their seasons vacated. 2 of those seasons were when Chris Webber was there. So despite having a great college career, none of it counted. Webber's 2 college seasons were wiped out of the history books, and his participation in this scandal was a huge reason why his Hall of Fame chances are very polarizing. But he will get in eventually. Anyway, in the 1993 draft, Webber would be selected by the Orlando Magic with the 1st overall pick. Then, the Magic immediately traded him to the Golden State Warriors in exchange for their pick, Penny Hardaway. It was a pretty good deal for the Magic, as Penny and Shaq would become a prominent duo. But for Golden State, well, Webber would only play there for 1 season. He would have a great rookie season, averaging over 17 and 9, winning the Rookie of the Year. However, what pushed him out of Golden State was a bunch of disagreements with the coaching staff. Coach Don Nelson wanted to play small ball, and that included putting Webber at center, even though he was 6'10". That might seem fine by today's standards, but back then, most centers were over 7 foot tall, and much stronger than Webber. Unsurprisingly, Webber greatly opposed Nelson's game plan and hated playing center because it didn't take advantage of his full skill set. At Webber's size, Coach Nelson wanted him to keep posting up like a big man, but Webber was more suited to play a point forward role, a playmaking power forward at the top of the key with his great passing ability and court vision. Their disagreements reached their highest point in the 1994 offseason, where Golden State chose Nelson over Webber. Ultimately, Webber would get traded to the Washington Bullets even after a successful rookie season. It was one of the few times in history when the reigning Rookie of the Year would get traded immediately after their rookie season was over. However, Washington, D.C. is where Webber's career took off. In 4 seasons there, he would average around 21, 10, and 4 with over a steal and a block a game. It was here where he would make his first ever All-Star game and put on a display of his incredible skills, something that he could not do in Golden State. Now playing his natural position, Webber would always be second on his team in assists, and the offense would run through him very often, especially at the end of games. Slam magazine described him as, quote, strong, rangy, versatile, and deceptively athletic for a player of his size. Webber still looked every bit the generational talent, the guy who could redefine the role of an NBA power forward. Webber would team up with former college teammate Juwan Howard, and the two of them would turn the franchise around, going from the worst team in the league to around a 40-win team. However, overall, there wasn't much team success, and they only made the playoffs one time in those 4 seasons. During these years, Webber would also fall victim to the injury bug. He was battling injuries for a long time, mainly shoulder injuries, which took a very long time to rehab and fully recover. It also forced him to change his jump shooting motion. It caused him to miss 95 games in his first 2 years with the Bullets. Additionally, he was also being overshadowed by Juwan Howard, despite many fans believing Webber would be the next great power forward. When talking about this, Webber said, "That hurts, but it's the reason why I'm going to keep going. It's the reason why I'm not going to get tired in games. Something good has to come out of what I've been through. I've gone through too much the last 2 years to not reap the rewards of hard work." While Webber would certainly reap the rewards of hard work, it would not be in Washington, D.C. The summer of 1998 saw him get traded to the Sacramento Kings, where he would develop into a true superstar. Right away, he made his mark, making 4 straight All-Star appearances, 3 All-NBA second teams, and an All-NBA first team nomination. On top of all this, he saw his team finally start winning, and for the first time in his young career, he was the guy leading a championship roster. His highest scoring season came in 2001, where he averaged over 27 points and 11 rebounds. In Sacramento, under head coach Rick Adelman and the leadership of Chris Webber, they would revolutionize the game of basketball, implementing a style of motion offense that hasn't been seen in a long time. While many look back and think of Webber as the ringleader, it was a total team effort, and those Kings rosters were stacked from top to bottom. During the early 2000s, isolation offense was at its peak, and many teams saw success by playing that way, especially the Lakers and Spurs. They would relentlessly feed their superstars the ball. However, the Kings did not operate that way. The team perfected many different plays that are quite common among the modern NBA offenses. They're used frequently today, things like the dribble handoff or the backdoor cut. What you see from the current day Denver Nuggets or the previous version of the Golden State Warriors with Andrew Bogut, the Kings' offense looked very similar. It was the prototype. The main advantage the Kings had was that every single player on their team can pass. Their point guard, Mike Bibby, was a great passer and a great scorer. Their shooting guard, Doug Christie, was one of the early examples of a 3-and-D player, and he would take on the task of guarding all the best perimeter threats. Their small forward, Peja Stojakovic, was arguably the best three-point shooter in the entire league, right next to Ray Allen, and he was also an All-Star. Their big man duo of Webber and Vlade Divac was by far the best passing frontcourt in the entire league. The Kings' offensive game plan and their style of play perfectly suited the skill sets of every player on the team. It was a fantastic match. In the 2002 playoffs, they had their best chance to win the championship. I'm sure everyone knows about this series, the Western Conference Finals, which saw the Lakers eventually defeat them in 7 games. It was arguably the most controversial series of all time, with Game 6 being the worst. Years later, when that huge referee scandal involving Tim Donaghy was brought into light, that 2002 series between the Lakers and Kings was at the center of controversy. In 2008, Donaghy's lawyer made a public statement that said, "Referees A, F, and G were officiating a playoff series between teams 5 and 6, which were of course the Kings and Lakers, in May of 2002. It was the 6th game of a 7-game series, and a Team 5 victory that night would have ended the series. However, Tim learned from referee A that referees A and F wanted to extend the series to 7 games. Tim knew referees A and F to be company men, always acting in the interest of the NBA, and that night, it was in the NBA's interest to add another game to the series. Referees A and F heavily favored Team 6. Personal fouls resulting in obviously injured players were ignored even when they occurred in full view of the referees. Conversely, the referees called made-up fouls on Team 5 in order to give additional free throw opportunities for Team 6. Their foul calling also led to the ejection of 2 Team 5 players. The referees' favoring of Team 6 led to that team's victory that night, and Team 6 came back from behind to win that series. With that being said, the Kings still had their chances to win in Game 7, but some of their players had horrible games. A year later, the Kings were still looking strong and ready to make another push for the title. But in the 2003 Western Conference semifinals, Webber suffered a devastating knee injury, an injury that required microfracture surgery. It was career-threatening, and afterwards, his career went downhill super quickly. While he did make a comeback, he looked nothing like before, and it was clear his knee was still bothering him. While the Kings were still a strong team without Webber, they were obviously no longer contenders. By 2005, he was traded to the Philadelphia 76ers. It was a trade that gained major media coverage as it teamed up Webber with a perennial superstar in Allen Iverson. However, at that point, nobody realized how severe Webber's knee injury actually was. While he was still putting up 20 and 10, his efficiency plummeted, and as a result, the Sixers didn't get anywhere. After a brief stint in Detroit where he was a role player and helped them reach the conference finals, and another brief stint in Golden State, Webber would then retire in 2008. After constantly struggling through nagging knee problems that never went away, all because of that knee injury back in 2003. So, how good was he actually? Well, in his prime, he was just as good as Dirk, just as good as Tim Duncan, and just as good as KG. However, his prime was relatively short, and his accolades pale in comparison to some other all-time greats. I believe if the Kings won the 2002 title, Webber would be viewed much differently. He'd be a first-ballot Hall of Famer without question. Also, if it weren't for the injuries, he could have been a top 5 power forward of all time. But as it stands, he's probably around a top 10 to top 15 power forward ever. And that's all, folks. That sums up the career of Chris Webber. Let me know your thoughts on him in the comment section. Thank you everybody so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.